Hey, this is Nicole Kelly, host of Disarming Disability. Thanks for listening to the following show on Public House Media.
This is Jenna Burt, host of the Confessions of a Military Spouse podcast here on Public House Media. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media. Once you're done with this episode, I hope you'll come check out my show, Confessions of a Military Spouse, where we dig deep and talk about the unspoken hard truths of what it's really like to be a military spouse. A new show comes out bi-weekly. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes so you never miss an episode of Confessions of a Military Spouse. Thanks again for checking out the following broadcast on Public House Media.
Welcome to Let Me Be Forward, and welcome to a new episode brought to you by Public House Media. I'm your host, Baxter Colburn. I am so excited that you're here with me on this week's episode of the show. We've got a great one in store for you, 3 terrific guests, lots of information, lots of content to digest about the past week in Forward Madison, Minnesota United, the Women's World Cup. There's so many things going on, and I'm so excited to get into it. Before we do, though, a quick reminder, the show does come out every Wednesday during the Forward Madison season, so you're stuck with us for at least a couple more months. You're welcome. You can find the show on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. I also want to remind you the show is available on social media. If you want to come at us on Twitter, at LetMeBeForward, I am at Baxter Colburn, and my wonderful co-host Madeline Cum is at Maddie Cum, MADDIEKUMM. Well, folks, another loss for Forward Madison. We'll get into that a little bit later in the show. But this week, 3 great guests. Let's focus on the big things. Let's focus on the excitement. Brian Bement is here. He's up for Goal of the Week. And also we have the wonderful, talented, and new co-founder of the Featherstone Flamingos, Kyle Carr, is here this week, and head coach Daryl Shore answers my questions about his suspension, about what the team needs to do to get back on track, and of course look ahead to FC Tucson. As we always do before we dive into the interviews, let's take a look at the news and notes from around the soccer world. There were only 3 games in USL League One this past weekend. One, of course, the Forward Madison 2-1 loss to Orlando City B. We'll get into that a little bit later. Toronto FC 2 got a 3-0 victory over Lansing Ignite, proving once again that no team is invincible in USL League One after the Ignite got a 1-0 victory against Forward Madison last week. Now Toronto comes out and spanks the Ignite 3-0, and if you'll remember, Forward Madison beat TFC2 just a couple of weeks ago also. So there's really no consistency as far as those teams that really are surefire wins. North Texas, I would say, is about the only team that I would have a pretty good feeling putting any sort of financial gain down to possibly bet on. But we're not in the ways of betting. We're not in that sort of industry. So I'm not going to bother betting on USL League One games because, honestly, it's so unpredictable. FC Tucson got a 0-0 draw with Richmond. That's the 3rd draw in a row for FC Tucson as they get ready for their match against Forward Madison coming up in just a few days. That could be very interesting. Another team hungry for a victory, but they, of course, have to take on another game with Orlando before they trot up to the big city of Madison. So a big couple of slates of games. I talk about that with Daryl Shore later on in the program also, and that's going to be something interesting to see about just how fresh FC Tucson is when they finally come to town. Of course, the other big story in the soccer world was the U.S. women's national team 13-0 win over Thailand. Alex Morgan, 5 goals, 3 assists. Are you not entertained? Yes, I am. Thank you very much. What a game, what a win. And the U.S. women's national team flies out of the gates in the final of the first round group matches in the 2019 Women's World Cup. Is the U.S. women's national team favorites to win it all? I think they still certainly are. And I know they played Thailand. I know many folks can be a little over the top, saying, well, of course they're going to beat Thailand. I'll be honest, I honestly thought the score was going to only be like 5 or 6-0, and then it kept growing and growing and growing and growing, and we ended up at 13. They might have hit 20, honestly, but there was a couple of penalty kick calls I felt like should have been called that were not, but that is what it is. 13-0 your final score as the U.S. Women's National Team. 2 goals from Rose Lavelle, UW-Madison alum. We hope to get her on the show in the future if possible. It'd be great to get Rose's take about Forward Madison and other things going on in the soccer world. I've had the opportunity to talk to her in the past and look to hopefully get her back on if we can. Time now for the first interview of the week. Of course, as we mentioned, Madeline Cum is here, as she always is. She sits down with Brian Bement to talk about family, soccer, and of course, what it means to play for the Flamingos.
So no, honey, I'm good. I can have another, but I probably should not. I got somebody at home, and if I stay, I might not leave alone.
Hey Baxter, I'm back with another player interview on this week's Let Me Be Forward. This week I sat down with Brian Bement, and we talked about his Orlando City B 89th minute goal, except it wasn't enough to push them over the edge, so it was another loss for Forward Madison FC. We also talked about the suspension of Josiel Nunes and Coach Shore and how that affected the game. And then we talked about Googling his name, how he comes up as a convicted killer. I was kind of nervous for the interview, and if you're taking anything from this episode, bring back the hashtag swag like Bement. Let's get into it. So just jumping right into it, let's talk about this past weekend at in Orlando last Friday.
All right.
Yeah, walk me through that game and tell me about your goal, because you had a goal in the 89th minute, and unfortunately it was still a loss, but it was a really great moment for you. Why don't you walk me through that a little bit?
Obviously that one was tough because it was kind of a game that we really kind of needed a result in. So to end up with a loss in Orlando is obviously not ideal. Personally, like I said, it was great for me to finally get on the score sheet. However, I just wish it was a lot more of a meaningful goal. But at the same time, I feel like, that's what I'm there to do as a forward. So it was finally good to start doing that. That's obviously what my job is to score goals. And as a team, we haven't scored goals, and that was something that we touched on, was to make sure we have someone score. And I figured, you know what, why not me? So been working really hard as far as my finishing and the attack and training, and I was glad that it finally paid off there at least.
And moving forward, what do you hope to do more of? I mean, I guess that was obviously a great play, a great goal, and
thank you.
You're welcome. And what you said about training and everything, what do you want from yourself moving forward more? Like, did that goal give you, maybe even confidence? Did it give you maybe kind of a springboard for future games? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, if anything, it definitely helps. I've came into games late and created chances and was not able to put them away. And obviously, that's kind of frustrating, knowing that you get the chances and not being able to capitalize on them. So at least for me, that was good for me to finally kind of just get started a little bit. Hopefully, the floodgates can kind of start getting open here a little bit now that I got one. But like I said, soccer's a funny game. We'll see. Obviously, I'm feeling good about how I've been playing recently, and I just hope it now can continue forward, translating in the upcoming games.
And what was different about this game too was that there were a few suspensions. How did that affect you or the team with Josiel Nunes being out and Coach Shore?
I mean, obviously it's different. You have different personnel in the field. At least for us, I mean, we like to pride ourselves in having a team that is pretty interchangeable. So, I mean, guys who filled in have been guys who have been playing minutes and doing well for us. So I feel like in that aspect, we're a pretty close-knit group. as far as our locker room's concerned and how we all interact and play with each other on and off the field. So I feel like, although, yes, it definitely makes a difference because it mixes things up a little bit and we're missing two key components, we have guys that can fill in as well, which I think is a plus for us going forward.
And moving forward to obviously you want the team to win games and score goals and everything, but right now forwards at the bottom of the standings for USL League One. And I talked last week with Carl Schneider about this, and I know Coach Shore has said things like, oh, sometimes the soccer gods aren't looking down upon us, or we're not really lucky. How do you get that back again? Like you said, Orlando City Beat, that was a game that everybody was really looking forward to, and they needed that win, and it didn't happen. So what's the game plan now?
I mean, it comes down to where when a situation like this, your backs are kind of against the walls, and it comes down to, at this point, it's just going to be everyone just kind of grinding down deep and just showing some heart, at least to get back a little momentum and get on the right track, because it's one of those where, in the situation we're in, it's kind of like sink or swim, to where if we don't stick with it, we could continue losing games, being unlucky, whatnot. Obviously, all it takes is one to completely turn that around. So I think we just got to keep, basically just kind of grind and dig down deep, and at least until we get our next result. I think from there we can continue that momentum on, and hopefully till the end of the season, because I think we all expect to win a championship here.
And do you think that right now, like I said, like with what's going wrong, do you think it's not, is it just being unlucky? Do you think that there's one problem, or do you think that it's just a lot of things are being tried and it's just not happening?
I'd say it's a mixture of things. Like I said, we've had our chances. We didn't score them. We've limited chances, and they've ended up scoring off of the one of the chances they have. So that comes down basically just to kind of the minor details that we just have to perfect and get a lot better, because I think it's the little things right now that are kind of killing us.
Right. And yeah, it's hard. It's hard having these interviews. Like I said, I was talking to Carl last week too. He was saying some similar things, and I'm really hoping that things turn around soon. But turning around this interview a little bit to something a little bit more upbeat and happy.
Yeah, that's all good.
I feel like it's been so downer and everything, but I wanted to touch on this with you because I think this is something that's pretty specific to you, is the support for you and your family has for you. Tell me about that. Didn't they all come down to St. Louis all for a game? And I totally did my research, and your Twitter bio has that. Is that sign with the thing that says Bement has swag or something?
Swag like Bement?
Yes. Tell me about it.
That's hilarious that you brought that up. That was a hashtag that I had in college, and actually it followed me to my first club in Puerto Rico.
Everyone who's listening, bring it back. Bring it back, please.
I'm so down. Honestly, those were my arguably some of my best seasons as far as numbers wise when that got created back in college days. So yeah, 100% feel free to bring that back. But no, it just kind of started. I was having a good year and just all this kind of stuff, and I forget what happened, but one of my friends decided to start it up as a kind of a playful hashtag, and it just caught on to where I remember one game it was trending in Chicago when I had a hat trick, and it just blew up to where the athletic department took it over. And then, like I said, my first club in Puerto Rico obviously saw that from, I guess, past things that I had, and the fans picked it up and the club picked it up.
I love it.
Yeah,
and
that was a lot of fun. Yeah, my friends started that up for sure. It was great.
And it's swag like Bement, you said?
Yeah.
Okay, everyone, hashtag swag like Bement. I want to see it all over Twitter. Everyone who's listening.
Yeah, I'm all about that coming back. That's fine.
Oh my gosh.
I feel like that can help turn everything around.
That one hashtag, yes. Oh my gosh, I love that. Oh my gosh. Here, I'm going to write that down. All right, perfect. I'll have Baxter edit this middle part out.
Okay.
Okay, there was one other thing. Oh yeah, I wanted to ask you this too. Did you know when someone Googles your name, another Brian Bement comes up who's apparently a convicted killer in Oregon?
Yeah.
There's no relation, right?
So there is what I know of 3 Brian Bement.
Okay.
One of them is, like a convicted killer.
Yes.
Another one is a minister in Chicago who I'm actually Facebook friends with. He follows me on Twitter. He's a minister, actually, of a teammate I had in college, so it was kind of a small world. So I guess that I'm right in the middle.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, no, when I Googled you to, research for this interview, I saw that, and I was like, oh my gosh, please tell me it's not the same person. And it wasn't.
I think you would have known.
Right. No, exactly. I didn't know how old the case was, too, and everything, so I was like, oh my gosh. I'm like, what is this? But, yeah, if you Google search it, it's the second article that comes up after your Wikipedia page. Yeah.
That's scary. I didn't realize it was that high up.
Yeah, it is. I thought it was really funny. But,
well, now everyone knows.
Yep. If anyone has learned anything from this interview, it is #SwigLikeBement, and there is a convicted killer out there. I want to let you know, too, the fourth article that came up was writing a pen pal. There's a pen pal prisoner website that allows you to write to Brian Bement in prison. So,
oh, interesting.
Just wanted you to know that tidbit of information.
I appreciate this. This is all good things to know.
Right.
You think you know your name.
Exactly. Oh my gosh. And I want to say too, I still remember too, I think you were the first player that I followed on Instagram when Baxter and I signed on to do this podcast.
I'm honored.
Yes. I'm pretty sure, because I think you replied to my thing and slid in a little bit, if I'm right. Right? Way back when. I remember that, but that is... Okay, that is all the questions I had for you. So,
all right.
Thanks for answering those for me. Good luck on Saturday. Good luck on Saturday. I hope it turns around.
Yeah, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Time now for our weekly conversation with forward Madison FC head coach Daryl Shore, and it is a opportunity for us to catch up on the match that was this last week and look ahead to the matches that are coming up. And very first and foremost, good evening, Coach. Welcome back to Let Me Be Forward.
Baxter, thanks again for having me. It's always good to be with you.
Absolutely, Coach. It's a pleasure to have you on. And it's an interesting opportunity, Coach, because you did not coach this last week. You were suspended, and I want to get into that in just a minute. But I first want to get your reactions from how you thought your fill-in, who did a wonderful job, I think, with everything, did from your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, it's an unfortunate situation, but had full faith in Neil and Jim that they would be able to lead the group. Obviously, all the preparation for the games are done during the week of training, so there's really not a whole lot that goes on other than making some in-game adjustments and decisions on substitutions, which we had gone through plenty throughout the week. So thought they did a fine job, and was again had full faith in them, and it was one of those things where it's probably not the most ideal situation, but these things happen, and life goes on.
Absolutely, exactly right. So where were you during the actual game? I always am curious where coaches that have to sit out a game, where do they tend to go? Did you travel to Florida?
I did. Again, it was I was still allowed to address the team pre-game, so was in the locker room pregame, and then wasn't allowed to have communication while the game was going on or at halftime. So I was Orlando doesn't have a large press box. Usually you're either in a press box or a suite. So for this game, I was in the stands behind the home team. They have an area there where their executives watch the games, and I was sitting up in the stands watching the game by myself.
Wow. When's the last time you did something like that?
Probably 2011 or
Wow.
2012.
Okay.
So not the first time I've been dismissed from a game. It is the first time, however, that I did not know I was dismissed from the game until 2 days later.
And that's what I want to get into is I think everybody was a little surprised about the dismissal and how it all kind of came down. What exactly took place? From what we could all kind of tell, it looked like there was just some exchange of words with the referee after a call at the end of the game, or kind of clear this up for us if you can.
No, just after the game, I went up to the referees and shook their hands, and as I was walking away, I told the center referee what I thought of his performance and walked away. And I guess he didn't think what I said was very kind, so he decided to write me up in the report, and I take full responsibility. I need to choose my words better, and it's an unfortunate situation, but felt like we were a little hard done by on the night, and it's one of those things where I've got to control my emotions as the leader of the team, and I've got to do better, and I just let the heat of the moment get to me, and I didn't appeal it with the league. I didn't, there was no denying that I said what I said, and I got it off my chest, and unfortunately I paid the price for it.
Absolutely, and I appreciate you owning up to that as well. And sometimes you'll hear coaches and players that be like, "Nah, I didn't say that," or I appreciate you owning up to it and serving your time, as it were. Yeah.
No, listen. I told you. I told our fans. I told our group. There's no one more passionate than wanting to win than myself.
Exactly.
I'll support our players, and I'll support our organization until I'm told I'm not supposed to support them anymore. And it's one of those things where, again, I've got to do better as the leader of our group. And it was a heat of the moment thing, but it's one of those things where I'm not going to hide from anything, including this 4-game slide that we're on. We know that we've got to do better as a group, but it starts with me, and as a coaching staff, we've got to start doing better, and we've got to make some changes, and we've got to get this thing righted in the right direction.
Exactly right. I want to jump over now to the game against the Voyagers, because there were 3 unfamiliar faces to some fans on your back line for that starting 11. I'm curious who these players were and if we'll see more of them in the future.
You won't, because one of them is currently a student at the University of Wisconsin, just helping us out as a guest player. And then the other 2 were guys that we had in for preseason, and they did not make our final roster, but are guys that are local and have jobs and just are able to help us in situations like this. The game came at a time for us where having a game 2 days later, we didn't feel like we could run our starting group out and put a lot of minutes on them, knowing that we had a game on Friday. So just a few guys that were helping us out. I thought Zach from the University of Wisconsin did very well, and I believe he's only a sophomore, or maybe he'll be a junior at Wisconsin. But I thought he did very well and has a bright future if he chooses to pursue a career post-college.
Absolutely, and I think it was really good to see. It's nice to have that connection as well. And I didn't get a chance to ask Peter about this last week, but I've had some fans ask me, and I don't know the answer, but hopefully you can. With the players that the Green Bay Voyagers have, does Madison have access to those players if they need to for games, for League One games?
Not for League One games, because the players on the Voyagers are all amateur players, and when you play an exhibition game, the amateur players are allowed to play with your group just as long as you don't compensate them.
Sure.
You can, they can travel with you and you can feed them, but you're not allowed to compensate them. So if we did against Hertha, we used a couple of the Voyager players. We could use them in an exhibition game, but they wouldn't be available to us for the League One games.
Gotcha. Okay. I appreciate the clarification. Yeah, a couple of people had asked me about it, and I said, I don't honestly know, but I'm sure now we have some clarification on that. So let's look at the coming games. You take on FC Tucson for the first time this season, coming up on the 15th. You're back home again for 3 games. You've got FC Tucson on the 15th, North Texas on the 22nd, and then you host Minnesota United on the 25th. Obviously, some very intriguing matchups coming forward, but we haven't seen a lot of FC Tucson. Obviously, they're out on the West Coast. We don't know a whole lot about them, at least from here in the Midwest. But what can you shed some light on for how that team plays and what we should be looking for when they come into town?
Yeah, they're a team that's gotten some mixed results. They're a direct affiliate of Phoenix Rising, so it's a little bit different from the North Texas and the Orlando City B and the Torontos they're the farm team of a MLS team. This is now Tucson is the direct affiliate of Phoenix Rising of the USL Championship. So it's a group now that gets some of their players on loan, but they've also signed a few players, and their goalkeeper is actually a loaned player from LAFC of MLS. So LAFC has a little bit of a relationship with Phoenix Rising as well. So it's just one of those things where they're dangerous. They're very active, and it's one of those things now where we've got to be ready to play a full 90 minutes, and we've got to be able to compete on both ends. Otherwise, we're going to be in for a tough night. And their coach is Darren Sawatsky, who played in MLS back in the early days when MLS first started. So he's been around. He's been around the block, and they're well coached. And again, they're a team that's going to come into Breese Stevens thinking that they're going to play against a team that's on a little bit of a slide, so they're going to have some confidence. So got to have a good week of training this week, and right now it's cliche-ish, but we're at one game at a time mode, but this is a game now where we know we've got to get 3 points out of it being a home game.
Exactly right. And going back to that mixed results comment, you look at the last 5 games for FC Tucson, 1 win, 2 losses, 2 draws. They're coming off of back-to-back draws against Orlando City B, 2-2, and then a 0-0 draw this last weekend against Richmond Kickers. And then they've got a game before they even see you on the 12th as well against Orlando City again. So they're going to be coming in on a short week, so hopefully you can take advantage of a little bit of those tired legs as they have to go to Florida and then up to Madison. So hopefully that can play into your favor a little bit as well. So something for fans to keep an eye on, as they always like to know what's going on. Coach, any final thoughts from you as far as the production? It was great to see Brian get on the score sheet. Of course, a great little chip. It's up for goal of the week this week, of course. Any other takeaways you have from that Orlando game?
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's a game where we started out well, and Orlando gets 2 shots on goal, and they score 2 goals. And give them credit, the 2 goals they score are pretty, great finishes. But
Absolutely.
they come off of mistakes from our own end, and the players. We realize we're at a point now where little mistakes are costing us, and we've got to put a solid effort together for 90 minutes. But it's one of those things where, again, we're creating plenty of chances. We had 8 shots on goal to their 2 shots on goal. JC, right after they score their goal, comes down and gets a bicycle kick off. It's going in the goal. The goalkeeper is on the ground beaten, and a player from their defensive player jumps up and heads it off the bar and out. So a little bit of you make your own luck, but a little bit of it is we've got to get some fortunes to go our way. But again, very displeased with the results because we're dropping points. But again, not totally dissatisfied with the way we're playing. And I know that sounds a bit odd when you're not winning games, but we feel like we're playing decent soccer. And again, we're not playing great soccer because we're not winning, but we do feel like we're playing okay, and we're playing well enough at least be able to get points out of these games. So we've just got to shore up a few things this week in training, and we've got to get our confidence back. We've got to keep fighting, and we've got to keep pushing each other. And it's one of those things where once we get our confidence, and if we can get if we can get on the score sheet first, then obviously we feel like we'll have a good chance to win. We've the 2 games that we've won, we've scored. Well, I shouldn't say that. We haven't scored first in the Orlando game, but we feel like if we score first, then teams will have to start chasing us, and that opens up the way we want to play. But not going to get discouraged. We'll watch tape. We'll by the time this show airs, we'll have watched tape on the Orlando game, and we'll put it to bed, and we'll get ready for Tucson, and hopefully give our fans a reward for coming out, because they've been so great and supportive, and it's time that we pay homage to them with 3 points at home.
Exactly right. That game, June 15th at 7 p.m. at Breese Stevens Field. Tickets are still available, of course, forwardmadisonfc.com. Coach Daryl Shore, always a pleasure, sir. We'll talk to you again next week.
All right, Baxter. Thanks again.
Time now for our supporters section interview, as we have taken a couple of weeks off from it due to other exciting events and other interviews that we've had going on. But this week, we have an opportunity to highlight one of the newer supporters groups. It's part of the Flock family, the Featherstone Flamingos. You may have seen them pop up. The way that they brand themselves, at least on Instagram, they are called an all-inclusive supporters group of Forward Madison FC who aim to celebrate and promote Black culture. Brothers and sisters of the Forward Flock family. Joining us this evening is one of the founders. It is Kyle Carr. Welcome to Let Me Be Forward, Kyle.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be a part of it.
Absolutely, man. It is a pleasure to have you here. And I first and foremost want to thank you for being on the show, and let's dive right into it. What led you and the others that started this new supporters group to start the supporters group?
Yeah, so it was one of those things where Chris Fox and April and we kind of sat down and thought about it, and we kind of decided, it'd be really good to have that supporters group that really does feature African Americans and Black people in general. I know we have that with La Barra in the Latinx community. We have that with Mingle Ladies for the women out there. So just having another group so that someone can personally identify with, and maybe they don't feel comfortable in general, but they can reach out to us specifically because we can relate to them. We kind of look like them. It's that representation that we could show. So that's kind of how it came about. Just sat down, talked about it, wanted to see what we wanted to do for our focus and how we want to approach it. Do we want to just do more community work? Do we want to do more stuff during game days? And kind of decided it's just best to go all in for it.
And I think that's sometimes the best way to go about doing something like that. Is I think people sometimes are like, well, it's a good idea, but I don't know if I want to. It's like, no, like if we're going to do this, we're going to go all in and we're going to make the best that we can. And I think that's been a really cool part to see so far. And I know this has been something that's been in discussion for a while, obviously, and finding another supporters group within the Flock, I think, is really great because it continues to show just not only just the overall growth of the supporters group, but the diversity as well. Like you mentioned Labada, you mentioned obviously what you guys are bringing to the table now, and it keeps expanding. Obviously, we saw Mingo Ladies, so there's really something for everybody, which I think is fantastic, and people want to have that community to feel a part of that. Obviously all supports the common goal, which is supporting Forward Madison FC.
Correct, yeah, and that's another thing we wanted to show is that no matter who you are, this is a team for the city of Madison, and we want to represent all of Madison as much as we can.
Exactly right, and I think that's the beautiful part about all of this. So give me what you do on game day, because there's so many voices, there's so many characters. I think is a good way to describe it for what folks who are at the games witness what the Flock end is doing. What is your role in all of that madness and excitement that takes place when Forward Madison plays home at Breese Stevens?
Well, I'm going to say the first thing I probably do, and the biggest thing, is one of the capos. So I'm the one with the megaphone, yelling at people, trying to get chants going, trying to get songs going. So I'd say that's really the biggest part of what I do, myself and Kyle, Griffin, and there's a lot of other people that contribute to being capos. So that's one of the things. But otherwise, just jumping in and trying to help out as much as I can. If someone needs a quick break for the drums, try and help out with that. Just talking to different members in the Flock end, just so that way they feel like they are included. They feel like we do want to reach out to them. We want to show, hey, thanks for coming out. Thanks for cheering along with us. Thanks for just spending the time that you could have spent elsewhere.
Right.
Just being here and being a part of it. So I'd say the biggest thing is being a capo, but again, just going out and talking to as many people as I can and helping out as much as I can is my role, I would say.
When you first got involved with Forward Madison, you first heard about what was going on. I've asked this question to so many different people, and I asked this to Peter Wilt on the show last week. Did you have any idea it was going to be to this magnitude of what the growth would be? Did you, I mean, be honest with me.
I didn't, and I think it was after the home opener I had said this was more than anything I could have predicted at all. And I think, you kind of think, yeah, people are going to show up, people are going to get involved. You might, and you see there's a couple of people out there that you have personal connections with, and you kind of maybe build off of that. But to see 4,000 people consistently showing up for matches
it's incredible.
It leaves me speechless. Like I said, I don't think I would have predicted 4,000 people consistently showing up, but there's always a new face that you see. There's always someone that is there that you've never seen before, and they're there for their first game. And even just outside of the games, if you wear a Forward Madison shirt or jersey and someone recognizes it, it's like, hey, yeah, that's part of the soccer team, right? You kind of decide, yeah, it is that soccer team. It is something that's brand new, and trying to explain it to more and more people. So it keeps me on my toes every day, because I definitely would not have predicted it was going to be this large this quickly.
No kidding. Yeah, I was wearing a flock shirt. Actually, I went to I was down with my wife. We went. She's a fourth grade teacher, and her students had a tour of the Capitol. We don't live in Madison. We live up in the Door County area, so we were down there. And I wore my flock shirt just to the Capitol. And as nobody said anything the entire day. We were at a couple of different things, and then literally as we were getting ready to leave the Capitol, I think one of the security guards kind of gave me like a little tap on the shoulder as I walked by, and she was like, "Hey, nice shirt." I'm like, "What?" I'm like, "Oh, thank you." And she's like, "Yeah, I love that team." I'm like, "Wow, fantastic." And sometimes even obviously in the city, you'd like to hope there's going to be more brand recognition, of course, but it was just kind of cool that, I kind of had gone all over Madison that day and no one really had said anything. Not that they were supposed to, but there was that moment as we were just about to leave for the day that the lady was like, "Hey, I love your shirt, by the way, love that team." I'm like, that's awesome. It's cool to see that this is a big thing that people really are becoming passionate about. And it's been fun. It's been fun, obviously, to be a part of. And I want to transition to the team as a whole right now, because I'm always fascinated to get fans and supporters' reactions, because it hasn't been good lately. Let's just be honest about it. Another loss this last weekend, but obviously fans are still showing up. Fans are still passionate. And I know it's just a game, and I think that's a big thing that fans remind ourselves of, is saying, yes, it's just a game. We're doing things in the community. We're doing things for each other. This is so much more than just 90 minutes of soccer, but you still are centered around supporting a team that is not playing well at this exact moment.
Yeah, it is tough, especially with the run of form that they've had. It's been over a month since they've won a match, but at the same time, it is, I think it's in this situation, the team, it's not like the team's being significantly outplayed other than the second North Texas game. I kind of looked at all these matches, and it's like, other than that second North Texas game, the team hasn't been outplayed. It's just been, they haven't finished chances. They're creating the chances. The chances are there. It just hasn't been put in the back of the net. And a prime example is the Lansing Ignite match, where Brandon Eaton at the last minute has that curler, and it goes right off the post. Well, if it bounces a different way off the post into the back of the net, Forward Madison gets a point. Or if you're down in Chattanooga and maybe that weird rebound save that Brian had initially, if they clear it, it's a 2-1 victory. So a lot of these games is just tough because you can see it. It's not like the team quality-wise is behind everyone else. It's just seems like they can't get the ball in the back of the net. And I think Daryl said it last week, once you score one goal, I think there'll be a floodgate that happens, and I kind of agree with that sentiment. So I think it's just going to be trying to be patient, trying to understand that this team has the talent to turn it around. And even if you look at Orlando City, who Forward Madison just played, they were having the same situation where they were creating a lot of chances, and they just weren't finishing them. And now they've been on a good run of form, and Forward Madison's got a pretty nice home schedule coming up, so maybe the block end will help with that. Maybe just playing at home will be a little bit more comfort for them. So I'm not worried about the run of results, just because, like I said, they haven't been outplayed in many of these matches.
Exactly right. And I think that is the best part about this, is that there is so much to be excited about. And we hear that from Daryl Shore every week when we chat with him. And We heard it in his interview in a couple of segments previously as well. I mean, there's still that keep the faith mentality, and it's great to hear that folks are still rallying behind this team. And obviously from us in the media, it's great to just sit back and be like, well, they're not playing good. Obviously something's wrong. Well, yeah, obviously it's very obvious to everyone. The goalkeeping is fine. The defense is fine. The offense is just not finishing their chances. It's a simple fix. And once Brian Bement scored that goal at the last of the game, I kind of thought the back of my mind, I'm like, all right, that's what we needed to do. We just needed to score a goal. And now hopefully next game, things can start getting a little bit more confident moving forward, because it's like, hey, we finally got a goal. Let's actually pretend that, we're fine. Let's get over this funk and let's get recentered and get some goals in the back of the net and go win another game.
Yeah, and I think you kind of mentioned it. You have 2 first-choice keepers. The back line has been good all season, despite, call-outs in terms of Wyatt or injuries, or, Pato had didn't have his clearance at the beginning of the season. So the defense has been good. The midfield, there's so many options that you could pick from, and you could only play 3. So you have plenty of chances and plenty of options for the midfield and for the forwards. You got Don Smart in the wing, you got Paulo, you got Gerald. Each of them have had stretches where they've had really good play. So now it's just a matter of all of it clicking at the same time and just finishing those chances and, those 50-50 shots. If one thing goes a little bit differently, who knows? Maybe we're talking about how Ford is at the top of the table and they're a goal-scoring machine instead of, they're on the bottom of the table. It's just because they haven't been clinical enough. Exactly right.
And this could all be completely different in a month or 2 months, or at the end of the season. We could be laughing saying, remember when we were at the bottom of the table and now we're in the top 4? It's just how the game of soccer works, and there's still so much soccer to be played, which is amazing. So, Kyle, as we wrap this up, I just want to give you an opportunity to say anything else you want to about the supporters group, about anything about the flock coming up, things that people can get involved with, ways to contact you guys. What's the best way to do all of that?
Yeah, I guess to follow Featherstone, we are on Twitter and Instagram, so you can just follow Forward Featherstone for that. We are going to start getting involved more in the community. We're going to work with the club and kind of help out with some soccer clinics. La Barra has a Southside series that they do with the Madison Police Department these next couple weekends, so that's something that people should definitely try and reach out and see if they can get involved in. Otherwise, just keep following, the flock on social media. We're trying to do as much as we can to get everyone involved, as whether it's playing a game of kickball or just hanging out doing a team trivia. So it's a lot of things that we want to emphasize, and as always, the Featherstone and along with the bar and Mingle Ladies and the flock, we're an all-inclusive group. So if you are interested in getting involved, do not hesitate to reach out to us. We all want to accomplish the same thing. That's try and make Madison a better community, try and use soccer, try to use our platform to really emphasize and encourage anyone to feel like, I want to check out a Ford Madison game.
Absolutely. I love it. Kyle Carr, one of the founders of the Featherstone Flamingos, thank you for your time, sir, and we look forward to many more exciting opportunities and adventures this season, and hopefully having you back on the show again in the future.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Would always love to come back on, and, like I said, I think the team's going to be fine. Just got to keep the faith.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks for the time, Kyle.
No problem.
Time now for the Loon Report, your weekly look inside Forward Madison FC partner club, Minnesota United. Well, the Loons were off this past week after a 3-2 loss to Philadelphia back in early June. We have not seen them back on the field since that 3-2 loss. Coming up, they do have some matches in store as they look to move up the standings, currently second from the bottom in the playoff standings when it comes to the Western Conference. They still certainly have a lot to be thankful for, a lot to be excited about, but if I'm Minnesota United, it's not been good enough yet. They are in 6th place in the Western Conference. They hold 21 total points. FC Dallas, a very good team, just above them with 22 points. A win on this coming weekend would do Minnesota United well if they are able to capture that. Of course, U.S. Open Cup play going on right now, so still a little bit of a break until the next time Minnesota United hits the field. When they do, it will be June 12th, and that will be this evening, of course, as they take on Sporting KC. That game at home against, like I mentioned, Sporting Kansas City at Allianz Field, 7 p.m. kickoff for those looking to keep an eye on this match. Minnesota United only 1 win in their last 6 games. Sporting Kansas City, 4 wins, 1 draw, 1 loss. Sporting Kansas City, it's a U.S. Open Cup. Anything could happen, certainly. So hopefully the Loons are able to capture a victory if they've got the right people in store, as it were, when it comes to this. Last couple of previous matches, 2017, the last time these two teams met, 4-0 victory for Sporting Kansas City when it came to that matchup. That is your Loon Report for this week, your weekly look inside Forward Madison Partner Club, Minnesota United. Oh, Jenna Bird. People, let's be honest here for a second. As we wrap things up, we still obviously have a little bit of time left in the show. And I want to... This is the part that I'm getting to right now. As we continue to check things out, as we continue to take the temperature of Forward Madison this season, I want to make sure that we're not losing sight of the bigger overall picture, because I can sit here and I can tell you my thoughts and I can give you my feelings about the team, and I feel like it's been pretty much the same story the last couple of weeks, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think there's nothing wrong with constantly being this critical voice, but I feel like that can be tiring as well for a lot of folks, and I don't feel like many people enjoy the constant criticism. I can tell, obviously, when I talk to Daryl Shore and I talk to other members around the team. I mean, they understand what they need to do. They are humans, they're adults, they know exactly what needs to happen, and obviously they're doing their best to right the wrong. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the Orlando Forward Madison game. Here are my thoughts about the game. Orlando scored 2 world-class goals, and we see Brian Bement do a great job of a great little chip goal as well. This game boils down to the fact that it was 2 amazing goals scored by a really, really good player, and I don't think any goalkeeper on any team at any level would have had a good shot at saving either of those goals. So what do you say as an analyst? You look here and you say, well, this is a day where one player had 2 special moments, and he made some history. Plain and simple. Forward Madison did not create enough magic. J.C. Banks hits the crossbar on a bicycle kick. End of story, pack it up, moving on. We're on to Tucson. It's that simple, in my opinion, honestly. FC Tucson, they're struggling. They're trying to get their stuff figured out right now because they obviously need to get back on the right foot, and they haven't been able to do that recently. They obviously know what they need to do to get back on track. They take on Orlando tonight, and that game's at 6:30 tonight, so I keep an eye on that one. You're going to want to pull for Orlando. Maybe you don't. Maybe you want to pull for a draw because, of course, Forward Madison needs to skip up the standings if they can. Against FC Tucson, a win would certainly help because we're getting to this point in the season where we are now looking at some noticeable difference. There's 4 points between Forward Madison and the next team in 9th place, which is Orlando. So, but at the same time, Forward Madison is 4 points from everybody under the table, which is not bad. There's 5 teams above them, all 4 points ahead of them. Orlando, Chattanooga, Richmond, Greenville, FC Tucson. So when I look at the standings, I say, hey, go get 2 wins. Go beat North Texas, go beat FC Tucson, and it's a whole nother table. We have a whole nother conversation come the end of June or come early July. As long as Forward Madison's sitting in a spot 7th or higher by the end of June, I think we're going to be fine. And I told you guys not to hit the panic button last week, and you listened, and you obeyed, and I appreciate that. So don't worry. We're going to continue to not press the panic button, and we are going to keep marching forward, and we're going to keep making sure that we don't lose our cool, and we are going to support this team through and through. Let me tell you about the poll question because it sparked a little bit of a fire on Twitter this week. Our poll question we asked, I changed it to a broad topic that I knew that would get a lot of results, and it did. And the question was, would you welcome promotion relegation between the USL tiers? 428 people voted, first of all. 86% voted absolutely. 11% said maybe, 3% said not a chance. The responses, the tweets, my gosh, people, thank you. Flamingos said, expand to 48 pro teams. I guess there are rumors of some teams making the jump and create 3 16-team tiers, home and away for each, and a Pro Bowl playoff like in England. He says, hashtag spitballin'. Rob says, I can see issues with relegation from a pro league to an amateur league, but it still would be nice for those clubs in 8th and 9th place on the table to have something to fight for come September. I completely agree. Mike said there's really only one correct answer, and we replied, and that is? And Mike said, absolutely. And then 80085, that's his username, I don't know. He said, once USL Championship grows big enough for D1 qualification, MLS will become irrelevant. Bet on MLS turning on itself and fighting USL. That's an interesting thought process. Let me see. What were some of the other responses that we got this week? I think those are the big ones, honestly, as far as the comments back on that. I thought I had a couple more, but of course, at the moment, my phone is not responding to let me do what I want to do. But still, really, really good stuff, guys, honestly. And I can't honestly be mad about any of that. I truly believe that this is something that USL is going to have to fuss with in the coming years. Promotion relegation is very popular, obviously, in Europe. They've done the system well. It just hasn't been established properly in the United States, and that's because of us being behind the times when it comes to the soccer as a whole. That's just the reality of it. So will we see more of this in the future? I hope so. I hope we see some in the future. I think it would be fun. I think it would be entertaining. And like we were hearing from several users on Twitter, it gives teams more things to fight for. So I fully support that. So game on. Let's bring it to USL. I think it would be a great, great thing, honestly. I want to wrap this show up. I want to say thank you to our guests this week, Kyle Carr from Featherstone Flamingos, Daryl Shore, and Brian Bement for being on the podcast this week. This show does come out every Wednesday. It's a part of the Public House Media Network. Find them at publichousemedia.org. Subscribe to this show for free on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, CastBox. Pick your podcast platform. We are there. If we're not, tell us and we will get on that platform. Lickety-split. I don't know. I probably shouldn't have said that. But anyway, that's what happens when you're tired when you record the last part of the show, right, folks? And of course, the show is available on social media. I am at Baxter Colburn. I'd love to hear your thoughts about anything I said on the show today. Give me your thoughts about anything in the soccer world. I always love to talk. And of course, at Let Me Be Forward and at MaddieCum, MaddieKumm, to get in contact with our very own Madeline Cum. A big thank you to Forward Madison and all of those supporters from the flock that continue to bring this show each and every week to you. And I want to say a thanks to you, the listener, for spending time with me each and every week on your commute, on your trip to the gym, wherever it might be. I'm proud to be the voice of Forward Madison here on Let Me Be Forward. We'll see you next week.